So, welcome to Fortem Australia's Physical Activity at Home webinar. Just a very brief background about Fortem Australia. We're a not-for-profit charitable organisation, and we are here to sort of protect the communities that protect us. So, emergency services, first responders, national security. We're here to provide preventative mental health services and connection activities. Obviously, those have changed drastically in the last couple of weeks given COVID-19. But we're delivering some virtual stuff such as this to maximise your experience during this lockdown and sort of keeping our spirits up and all that sort of thing. My name is Sam. I'm a Community Engagement Coordinator here at Fortem Australia. I work out of Sydney. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, and I have a bachelor's degree in exercise and sports science and an honours degree in biomechanics, which is essentially the physics behind human movement. And I've worked with rugby league and rugby union teams with strength and conditioning in the past. So do have some experience behind physical activity. A little bit of housekeeping about this webinar. You'll notice at the bottom you have the ability to chat and to ask a question via the Q&A section. The Q&A I've got open on another screen just here, so I'll see them pop up throughout the webinar. I'll either answer your question within the section that I'm speaking about, or I've left some time aside at the end to answer any relevant questions that come up throughout the chat. So please feel free to type away at any questions you have. And obviously this isn't school. We don't need to put your hands up or anything. If you need to go and do stuff with your day, then please, by all means, just have me on in the background and go right ahead. So this webinar really is about physical activity in the confines of your own home. Now, how that sort of pertains to national security and first responders. Some administrative workers and guys that aren't necessarily on the front lines with the COVID-19 response may be working from home. However, no one has access to health services such as fitness centres, social sport, things like that. So this really does affect everyone, whether we are on the front lines or whether we are administrators. So this webinar really is about making the most out of your personal circumstance that you may have in regards to your living arrangement. And how we can maintain a level of mental and physical healthiness through physical activity. So I won't touch too much on the science of exercise, more about how we can maintain our levels of physical activity at home. If you do have any specific questions that are particularly scientific or anything like that, I'll do my very best to answer them with the knowledge that I have. However, if I can't answer them right now, I'll get some details off you, do a bit of research, and I will get back to you with an answer. I promise you that. So, the importance of exercise. So exercise in Australia in particular, in our society, is a wonderful connection activity. So whether it be doing classes in the gym, whether it be social sport, whatever sort of exercise that you do, it's typically been a very social experience in Australia. And now, having lost that, we have also lost an element of our social connection. So it is really important that we maintain not only the physical activity component in our daily lives, but that we also maintain the social connection element that we would have with our sport or with our physical activity otherwise. Another thing that's really important that is relevant to now is something that's recently been coined in the past 2 weeks or so called isolation fatigue. So isolation fatigue is a sort of phenomenon that even though we may be doing less with our lives in terms of physical activity or work or what have you, we are feeling more and more tired. And this is a thing, and it is something that not only you are feeling, everyone is sort of feeling it, and it's because of something called circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is essentially your internal clock. It's a 24-hour cycle that revolves around sleep, meals, and exercise and those sorts of things. And given that the isolation that we put ourselves in has significantly altered that timeline of, our commute to work, which is maybe no longer relevant, or changes in shift work, or, maybe we're sleeping in a bit more, maybe we're going to bed earlier or later than what we might have been. All those are disruptions to our circadian rhythm, and they are the explanations as to why we may be feeling more tired, even though we're doing less. So the way that we overcome isolation fatigue is by creating more of a routine. So it doesn't necessarily need to be that your alarm goes off at 6:30 every morning. It's more around structuring your meals a bit more regularly, around timing. You know, if you have lunch at 11:30 the next day, don't have it at 3 o'clock the next day, things like that. Trying to maintain some level of consistency of the times that you work out. Those sorts of things are really key in maintaining a circadian rhythm, and that will allow you to be less fatigued throughout the day, and your body will adjust to the new schedule far quicker, and you will be feeling a lot less isolation fatigue. Another aspect about physical activity and sort of general mental and physical wellness that I won't necessarily touch on in this webinar, but something that's incredibly important is diet. Your diet is so unbelievably important to your mental and physical health, and we follow something in the exercise and science industry that's roughly the 70-30 rule, in that your planning and your ability to gain muscle, your ability to gain cardiovascular fitness, all those sorts of things follow an approximate 70-30 rule, in that 70% of it is diet and 30% of it is exercise. So luckily, our activities coordinator, Claire, is a dietitian, and I know that at some point in the near future, she'll be putting out some sort of webinar around sort of healthy eating and diet. So make sure you do keep your eye out for that. Okay, we're going to touch on really briefly the types of exercise that we should be doing at home or in isolation. So there are 4 major types of exercise that I have that I've sort of allocated. The first is strength. The second is cardiovascular or cardio. The third is flexibility, and the fourth is posture. The last one is particularly key if you are working from home. So strength is sort of the exercise that you think of when you think of a gym. Squats, push-ups, sit-ups, bench press, deadlifts, all those sorts of things are strength exercises. They're anaerobic exercises, meaning that they don't rely so much on oxygen to be used. They're anaerobic, they're without oxygen. Cardiovascular or cardio exercise are aerobic exercises, something you can maintain for an extended period of time at a relatively moderate to high intensity. Running, cycling, rowing, these sorts of things are all cardio exercises. Luckily, at this stage in Australia, we are still able to leave the home to do exercise. So going for a run, going for a ride, things like that are still possible. So at the moment, it's not an issue to maintain our cardio fitness. The next one is flexibility. Flexibility is an incredibly important and often overlooked aspect of exercise, particularly in the male cohort. Really important that we keep up our levels of flexibility, our range of motion of the joints and the muscles around the joints. It really significantly increases your quality of life, and does things like increase your resistance to injury, and it has significant effects on your posture as well, which is also really great. The wonderful thing about flexibility training as well is, for the most part, depending on what sort of training you do, it's relatively low intensity, meaning that you can do other things whilst you're doing flexibility training. For example, you can watch TV, have conversations, and even if you're in the kitchen, you can sort of maintain what you're doing there whilst doing some element of flexibility training. And the fourth one, again, particularly important if you are working at home, is posture. So a couple of really effective things that I found that have fixed my posture, because I used to have, and to a point still have, quite poor posture, is a strategy that I've used, which is putting a piece of strapping tape between your shoulder blades. So what that does essentially is it gives you a physical reminder when you slouch. So when you bend over, the tape that's between your shoulder blades pulls the skin as you slouch and reminds you to maintain that sort of very positive sort of posture and stance on your body, and that will have a really positive effect on your posture. If you have good posture, for the most part, it has a flow-on effect to the rest of your training, and you will get reduced pain and sort of reduced injury, increased injury resistance with all the other aspects of your training. One thing that is important to know about posture is that when you do take a deep breath, this point here where your diaphragm has expanded and your back is straight, this is your best position of posture. So if you do feel that you are slouching a little bit, a really fantastic way to maintain your posture is just to take a really deep breath and then hold that position at the top of the deep breath is a really good way to sort of maintain that posture. We will also speak very briefly about ergonomics. A little bit harder in the home, depending on your home setup with your office. So it sort of is about maintaining that 90 to 100 degree angle between your elbows, hips, knees, and ankles. So what that means is when I'm seated here at the computer like I am now, elbows 90 to 100 degrees to the keyboard, hips and legs sort of here at roughly 90 to 100 degrees, knees and ankles all at the same sort of at the same angle, and eyes ideally, now I'm on my laptop here so it's a bit different, so I'm looking down, but eyes roughly level with the top of your monitor. That's the best ergonomic position, and that will sort of maintain your posture. Also really important to know that your body is essentially a big pulley system, and anything that is affected on the left or the right side can have a really significant impact on the other one. So for example, at the moment I have a bit of an injury on the outside of my right foot, and that has a flow-on effect of me changing my gait, and therefore I've got actually now a little bit of a pull on the left-hand side of my back because it's compensating for the change in gait. So if you do have those little niggles and things like that, it is really important to see a healthcare professional at the moment because they are still accessible, and really make sure that we get those things right, because when we do eventually go back to rescinding the lockdown and things like that, our emergency services, law enforcement, all you guys are going to be an incredibly important part of our society as you are now. So it'll be really key that we're sort of, you know, the best we can be with our fitness and our physical activity. So a couple of things regarding challenges and strategies to overcome those challenges regarding exercising at home. So I have found that there are 4 major challenges for our community, being the national security, first responder, law enforcement, emergency services, whatever you'd like to call us. So the first is a lack of equipment. The second is a lack of space. The third is a lack of time. And the fourth is motivation. So I'll touch on each of these challenges and how we can overcome them really briefly. So regarding a lack of equipment, obviously with the closure of health clubs, fitness clubs, gyms, things like that, we don't have access to the machines and all that we would have had, things like squat racks and machines for strength and, you know, treadmills and things like that. So it's really important that we have an exercise plan in place that is relevant to what we have access to. So if you don't have a squat rack at home, then obviously trying to do 100 kilos is going to be impossible for you. So really important that we utilize what we have, and you can really effectively have a strong and positive experience with working out in physical activity with no equipment whatsoever. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but you don't need equipment to maintain a strong strength and cardio program. The second one is a lack of space. So Australia are very lucky, and a lot of the work that you guys have done has been really effective in making sure that we are right in the top percentile of the world in terms of our accessibility to services at the moment. We're lucky enough to have a lot of green space as well. So if you can utilize those spaces, you know, local parks, things like that, as a dedicated location to work out, that's obviously going to be a more effective way to work out, given that you've got more space. If you don't have access to that for whatever reason, I've just got a little bit of space here on the floor, which is about 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. That space is a dedicated exercise space. I know that when I step into that space that I'm working out, and there's really no other reason for me to be there. Having a dedicated workout space is a really powerful way to ensure that you stay accountable to your workout plans. Like I said, roughly 2.5 by 2.5 meters is what you need, depending on how big you are. I've got carpeted floor here, so I'm comfortable. But if you don't, make sure that you are comfortable, yoga mat, whatever else you need, to really be effective and efficient in what you do. Next one, motivation. Before we get to motivation, lack of time. So for the general population, a lack of time is not necessarily an issue because a lot of people have all the time in the world. but the community of national security, first responder, emergency services are working as hard as they ever have. So lack of time is a significant one. And there are some different workout strategies that you can use to really use the time that you have effectively. What we are sort of talking about in that regard is, you may have heard different acronyms, things like AMRAP or EMOM. Using those strategies and those different types of workouts that are really time effective is really key. So AMRAP stands for as many reps as possible. So it's essentially really going hard and flogging yourself for a small amount of time and using that small amount of time effectively. And the other one is EMOM, which is every minute on the minute. So for example, if you set 15 minutes aside, you've got every minute you perform a different activity or the same activity, and then you've got a mini rest period within that minute. Might be 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, and 10 squats in that minute. And then you've got whatever time you've got left. And then on the next minute, you do the same, and then the next minute, and then the next minute. That utilizes that time really effectively in whatever you happen to have available. The next one is motivation, and this is probably the most significant factor that I've found for working out at home, is that I'm just nowhere near as motivated as I am if I was going to the gym or if I was going to rugby training or whatever it might be in your life that that sort of governs your motivation. So first and foremost for me, and things that have worked for clients of mine in the past, is goal setting. So I have found that there's two types of goal settings. One is short-term and one is long-term. Your first short-term goal might be as simple as just finishing the workout. You might have had something really hard set for you, or you might have found something on the internet that you've really enjoyed that's really bloody hard. Just finishing it could be your short-term goal, or getting those 10 push-ups or getting those 50 sit-ups, whatever it might be. Achieving those short-term goals is going to work towards you achieving your long-term goal, which might be the classic things like whether it's dropping a dress or pant size, maintaining positive mental outlook, those sorts of things. Sorry, I've just had something come up here. Motivation and training by myself are the biggest challenges for me. Training by yourself can be a really big challenge, absolutely. I've found that having some goals and having things like that to be accountable to yourself is really key in overcoming that challenge. So I've also found that has worked for me this week even, is that I have, for example, a podcast that I've been listening to that went for 35 minutes. And so I just went for a run and I made sure that I was running until the end of the podcast. So little things like that, sort of those extrinsic factors that motivate you can be really key. Again, each individual is different, so it's going to be completely up to you as to what works for you. Another example of a way that you can sort of maintain a schedule is, if you are working from home, especially, this one's really good, is having a calendar event in your work calendar. So here at Fortem, I've got a calendar that I sort of stick to regarding my my daily plan and how I structure my day with my tasks. And I have included a workout every day in that schedule, so that on my work phone, I get the reminder. I sort of am made to be accountable for that. And that's a really effective way, because you feel more obligated to do it if it's in your work schedule. That sort of thing works for me. If you have an opportunity to work out in an open space outdoors, by all means, utilize that space every single time you can. So if you've got a backyard, I'm lucky enough here with, I've got an apartment here in North Sydney, and there's a small amount of grass out the back that we can all use in the apartment, and we're lucky enough to be able to use that during isolation. And even just that, being able to get vitamin D, and like I mentioned before, with that circadian rhythm, having that access to sunlight is a really important and powerful factor in keeping that motivation. The next one is working out with your family or by yourself. So you can use the people that you live with, whether it be your partner, your kids, your housemate or roommate, whoever happens to be in your particular living arrangement, to your benefit, by being accountable, by doing a workout with each other, egging each other on, those sorts of things, if you're a particularly extrinsically motivated person. However, you can use it the other way, that if you are getting a bit of cabin fever and you sort of need a bit of time alone, that the exercise becomes your time, and it's a dedicated time where you are not to be bothered. It's, you know, whether you want to do meditation, yoga, Pilates, those types of activities that are sort of more focused on mindfulness, really good to use that opportunity to make sure everyone in your living room, like in your house, knows that that's your time. I appreciate that that can be really hard with kids, because there's no such thing as your time if you've got kids. But making it clear that that's your time can be an effective way to sort of maintain your mental wellness there as well. The last one that I found is a great motivator for me. Fortem have been using an app called Strava. I just got Strava the other week, and it's fantastic. It logs your runs or your rides if you cycle, and it sort of gives you different stats around split times, total time, total distance, that sort of thing, and a map of where you've been. So it's a really effective way and fun way of sort of mixing up your workouts. And there's a sort of a bit of a leaderboard if you're quite a competitive person, if you want to sort of compete in that way, or it's more of a social platform. If you're interested in being part of a Strava Fortem group, then please send me a message afterwards, and I can get you in touch with the right person to sort of get you on that. It's fantastic, and I'm on it for, I don't cycle personally, but I run, so I'm on it for the running. So it's been really good for me, and it's been a powerful motivator because it's a bit more by the numbers. Okay. Lastly, we will just be talking about where you can source workouts. So the internet is a wonderful resource and a terrible resource at the same time because of the freedom that anyone can post stuff. So whether you're accredited or qualified or not, you can put stuff out there for people to view. So it's a bit of a two-edged sword in that you can get some absolutely fantastic resources for you to work out. Alternatively, you can also get something that's a bit of a dud and you don't know it because the expertise isn't necessarily there. However, I'm not going to touch specifically on the different apps that you can use, but because there are so many out there. What I will say though is be aware that when they say that they are free to download, a lot of them aren't necessarily free, in that you get 2 or 3 workouts for free and then they ping you with a charge. So just be aware that if you've got an app that you like, fantastic, stick with it if it works for you. But be aware that probably the internet rather than apps is a better way to go to source workouts, especially if it's from a credible source. I'm just going to go through some of my favorite places to source workouts. The first one is YouTube. YouTube is an absolutely wonderful resource. Again, you can get people that put stuff up there that's pretty irrelevant and not really that great. But the amount of people that are putting stuff up now, given the self-isolation, given the quarantine sort of situation that we're all in, is huge, and it's really fantastic. And it's really adaptable to what you have access to. So for example, I've got 2 8-kilo kettlebells, and those are the only pieces of exercise equipment that I own. So I can put into YouTube kettlebell upper body workout, and I'll have hundreds and hundreds of results. And you can do something similar. If you've only got a barbell, then you can put in barbell workouts and things like that into YouTube, and you'll get a plethora of results. So again, you got to make sure that you are careful of what you view. But there's some absolutely wonderful resources on YouTube that you can utilize and be really specific with what you're searching for. The next one, and this is fantastic if you've got no equipment, is gymnastics. So gymnasts are probably in the top 1% of the strongest athletes that are out there relative to their body weight, and everything they do is within their own body weight. So other than access to specific things like parallel bars, high bars and rings, things like that, a lot of the workouts and a lot of the core and strength workouts that they do are only using body weights, and some of the stuff that they can do are simply unbelievable. Now, obviously, we don't need to get you to that level, but there's some absolutely fantastic resources out there that gymnasts are posting online. And again, it's just a quick YouTube search for gymnastics workouts, and you'll never have a core workout like you have if you do a gymnastics one. The last one, excuse me. The last one, and potentially the most credible source of workouts online, would be your fitness center. So I am a member of Fitness First. So on the Fitness First website are a whole lot of blogs and different workouts that you can do at home that they're providing for their members. If you are a member of a gym that's close to your home and you search it online and you go on the online platform, it's likely now that they will have some sort of workout for you as a member that you can access. My partner is a member of Virgin Active, and there's 1,000 different resources that she can sort of utilize. So there's definitely some stuff out there for you to use. And yeah, I would heartily recommend going through your fitness center, because they've got corporate responsibility, and excuse me, their staff have qualifications and accreditations that allow them to post reliable and effective workouts. So that's pretty much it in regards to the physical activity webinar. If you've got any specific questions, please feel free to ask them now in the Q&A sort of section. And really, thanks for your time, and thanks for all the hard work that you guys have been doing. Like I mentioned, if you've got any questions, please feel free to type them in. I've just seen a comment here. We're also starting a 4-week 10,000 steps challenge on the 1st of May. And that's gone up on the Fortem Australia calendar. So if you go to fortemaustralia.org.au and find our calendar page, we're starting a 10,000 steps challenge. So again, if you are working out alone, that's sort of another way to maintain that connection between other people. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to ask them. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. Run for Blue is on in May, and registration fees go to Police Legacy. Thank you, Melissa. So if you are a runner and you're interested in doing the Run for Blue, then by all means get involved in that. I'll certainly do a bit of a Google search after this webinar to find some more information. Thank you, Melissa. So interesting about the timing of workouts and circadian rhythm. Working at the same time each day, is this important all the time or at the moment while we're experiencing different usual schedules? So regarding the different times of day working out, this has long been a debate with exercise science, and there's no definitive answer. So working out in the morning versus working out in the evening or the afternoon, there are benefits and drawbacks on both sides. So really what it comes down to is whether you enjoy working out in the morning or the afternoon, because that's going to have the most benefit for you. In the morning, the body has more uptake of cortisol and testosterone, which leads to increased levels of uptake from sort of muscle fibers. And in the afternoon, for the most part, there's an increase in body temperature, which allows greater contractility of muscle, which means that you are more effective when you contract the muscles, which leads to increased sports performance. So it doesn't really matter one way or the other, as long as you are happy with your schedule of your day. So for me personally, I work out in the morning because it sort of puts me in a good headspace for the rest of the day. And to be honest, after a full day of work, the last thing I want to do is then do a workout. So it's really up to personal preference. There's science on both sides, and they haven't come to a conclusion yet, which basically means make sure it just fits into your life, your schedule, your day. Everyone's different. So whatever's best for you. Any tips for shift workers? I'm working week on, week off, and then working the help desk at odd hours. So depending on sort of how, again, with the circadian rhythm thing, it's a bit hard because your rhythm is off given that it's not constant. So essentially, I would try to work out at the start of the day, for me personally, if you're a shift worker, only because that's when your energy levels are going to wax and wane quite significantly, being that you've got that circadian rhythm completely off. So at the start of the day would be better for if I was a shift worker, because that's where you are most motivated and have the most amount of energy, depending on if you're a morning person or not. And it sort of sets you up with the right headspace for the rest of the day. And there's another question here regarding working out late in the afternoon impacts negatively on sleep quality. Not necessarily true. There's benefits both ways. So if you work out in the morning, you set up your basal metabolism for the rest of the day, which means you burn more energy passively throughout the day, which obviously leads to increased tiredness, which leads to better sleep. However, you think about social sport and training for competitive sport and things like that that are on in afternoons and evenings. And that shouldn't have too much of a negative impact on your sleep. Really, as long as you do a good, effective workout at any time throughout the day, you shouldn't have a negative impact on your sleep. So even if you work out in the afternoon, it shouldn't have a negative impact on your sleep. Your muscles will still be recovering, you'll still be tired, and that tiredness will lead to a more effective sleep. The sleep aspect is a really important part of the exercise cycle, because that's where all the repair of muscles is when you do the damage, which is working out. So when you work out, you micro tear, you tear the muscles, and when they get repaired bigger and stronger, and that's how we get fitter, that's how we get stronger. So really, as long as you have that sleep period, you're going to have that repair of muscle, and as long as you have the right diet to supplement that repair, then there's really not too much science out there about the positive and negative impacts of working out at certain times of the day. I hope that answers your question. Okay, just give it another minute. Great. All right, everyone. If there's nothing further people would like to know, I'd like to really thank you all for your time again. If you've got anything that you'd like to ask me outside the context of the webinar regarding physical activity, please by all means send me an email at any time. You can go onto the Fortem Australia website to find contact details and things like that. But once again, thank you very much. I will send out a feedback, bit of feedback information for you guys to fill out. It's anonymous, so if you didn't find any worth in it, then please tell us and we'll rethink how we do it. But if you thought it was effective and you thought that was something that you can utilize, then let us know and we can expand on what we've already done. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again for all your hard work, and stay safe. Thanks, guys.